Israeli officials tell NBC News they've proposed a 2-month pause in fighting in exchange for the release of the roughly 130 hostages still in Gaza. News of the proposal coming hours after hostage families stormed a parliamentary committee demanding action from the government. Among them, grandfather Gilad Korngold. "You will not sit here while our children die," he shouts. 7 members of his family were kidnapped on October 7th.
Korngold is my kind of guy. And amid that growing internal pressure that you just experienced, just witnessed in that video, the Israeli government has reportedly offered Hamas a temporary ceasefire in Gaza in exchange for all of the remaining hostages. The offer came soon after Netanyahu rejected a hostage exchange offer from Hamas, which we'll get into in just a bit. But first, here's what Israel had proposed through Qatari and Egyptian mediators. According to reporting from Axios, the deal would include the release of all remaining hostages who are alive and the return of the bodies and remains of the dead hostages in several phases. So here's how the phases would play out according to the proposal from the Israeli government. The first phase would see the release of women, men over the age of 60 years old, and hostages who are in critical medical condition, Israeli officials said. The next phases would include the release of female soldiers, men under the age of 60 years old who are not soldiers, Israeli male soldiers, and the bodies of hostages. In exchange for returning those hostages, Israel said that they would agree to a temporary ceasefire that would last about 2 months. But they made it clear that they would not, under any circumstance, agree to ending the war altogether, even if all the hostages were returned by Hamas. Additionally, the Israeli officials said the proposal includes Israel redeploying Israeli defense forces so that some would be moved out of the main population centers in the enclave and allowing a gradual return of Palestinian civilians to Gaza City and the northern Gaza Strip as the deal is being implemented. Now, just as a reminder, there really isn't much left in northern Gaza. It has been leveled, it has been razed, it has suffered from the Israeli aerial bombardments. So this idea of Palestinians being able to go back to their homes is a ridiculous notion. There are no homes left in northern Gaza specifically. Now, with that said, how did Hamas react to this? Not well. They rejected the offer. They don't want a temporary 2-month ceasefire. They want a permanent ceasefire, and they will agree to release all of the hostages. Israel's spy chief also reported that Hamas senior leaders could leave Gaza as part of a broader agreement, which I think is a strange provision to include in this proposal. Despite its nearly 4-month war in Gaza, Israel has failed to capture or kill any of Hamas's most senior leaders in Gaza and left around 70% of Hamas's fighting force intact, and that's according to Israel's own estimates. In fact, just a few weeks ago, the New York Times had a piece, and buried within that piece was an interesting tidbit about what American officials are saying about how Israel is conducting this war and whether it's actually serving its purpose of defeating Hamas. Some American officials believe targeting low-level Hamas members, which is what's been happening, is misguided because they can be easily replaced and because of the unwarranted risk to civilians. They have also said the Israeli military bombing campaign in Gaza, which according to Gaza's health ministry has killed some 25,000 Palestinians, mostly civilians, could end up replenishing Hamas's bench of fighters. And you can understand why that would be. If your entire family is wiped out, you're more likely to be radicalized by that, and you're more likely to join the ranks of Hamas. So, behind the scenes, apparently there are some intelligence officials in the United States who are looking at how this war is being conducted, and they're like, this is kind of counterproductive. And then at the same time, as part of their proposal here, Cenk, they offered Hamas senior leaders the ability to leave Gaza as part of the temporary ceasefire. Israel's biggest remaining target in Gaza is Yahya Sinwar. And so he's still in the enclave, and I'm guessing that they're looking for him and targeting him. But a lot of people, innocent civilians, are dying in the meantime.
Yeah. So, all right, let's talk about what do two sides want in a deal and what's realistic and not. and then we'll talk about what Israel theoretically wanted in the war in the first place, and we'll talk about whether they accomplished that mission. So in the deal, so what Israel wants is they want the hostages back, they want full control of Gaza, they want the Hamas leaders to leave, and or all be killed, right? They started with the goal of complete destruction of Hamas. Now, even people in the war cabinet of Israel are saying, yeah, that's totally unrealistic. What I told you from day one, how are you gonna get all of them? How are you gonna kill every member of Hamas? It was an insane, lunatic, so-called goal. They never had that goal. It was always a lie. It was mainly for the reasons I'll explain at the end. But now even Israeli officials are saying, yeah, of course we can't kill everybody in Hamas. I mean, Jesus, we leveled the place and we didn't kill one single leader. And we think at best, we took out 30% of them, at best. And that's a total BS Israeli IDF estimate, okay? So they barely touched Hamas, but 25,000 people dead, mostly civilians. Okay, so now what does Hamas want? Hamas wants the release of all 6,000 Palestinian prisoners. They want a complete end to the war, and they want to remain in Gaza and in control. Okay, so both sides are not going to get what they want in its complete list, right? So the first set of stories I see on this is Hamas has rejected peace deal, the goddamn monsters. Then you read into it more and you realize, no, Netanyahu rejected the peace deal first. Okay, and so, and it makes sense for both of them to reject it because they start out with their full list of demands. So as much as I loathe Netanyahu and the leadership of Hamas, it makes sense for both of them to reject deals in the beginning. Then you have to get to a negotiated solution, which I have an idea of how this should end. But what did you want to say?
Yeah, it's just, I don't know. I'm under the impression that a peace deal is a little bit different from an agreement to defer the violence. What Israel proposed was deferring the violence for about 2 months.
Yeah, so look, both sides have things that are unrealistic, but the very core, like how many, can you really release all 6,000 Palestinian prisoners? I don't think so. Like if you get a big number, remember a lot of those guys are totally innocent, right? And a whole bunch of them are terrible guys. So they're never gonna release the actual bad guys, keep it real. So what they're basically doing is releasing people anywhere from like, oh, he threw a rock to randomly rounded them up, right? So you can get those folks, you won't get the serious guys. Or maybe you'll get a couple of them, etc., right? But asking for all of them and we get to remain in control of Gaza, etc., it's too much, obviously, to ask for on the Palestinian side. But let me get cut to the chase. What's the deal that can happen? A deal that can happen is they release all the hostages, they get some Palestinian prisoners back, and Israel actually stops the war and withdraws. But if Israel says we're never going to withdraw and we'll give you 2 months and then we'll go back to obliterating you and you're like, oh, you're rebuilding in those 2 months? Now we'll just destroy it again, so what? And we had 6,000 Palestinian prisoners that we basically, most of them we just kidnapped. Like we're not even trying them. The military is not even bothering to put them up for trial for a lot of them. So they'll just go round them up again. So at the end of the day, after the 2 months is over, Gaza would have gotten nearly nothing. Right? So that's not a deal you can take. On the other hand, if Israel actually leaves Gaza and actually ends the war, and then you have a prisoner exchange, that makes sense. But is Netanyahu going to do anything that makes sense?
No.
No way.
Let me actually take that back.
Except for the pressure.
Well, he is doing what makes sense for himself and his political career. And I think that there is growing, I mean, there was already resentment toward Netanyahu, prior to all of this, but that resentment has been growing in recent weeks because the family members of the hostages are like, oh wow, you really don't care about the hostages at all. And the absolute terror and siege that Gaza is dealing with is the very terror and siege that our family members who are held captive by Hamas have to deal with as well. The stories about the IDF soldiers deciding to shoot and kill Israeli captives as they have their shirts off, as they're waving white flags, as they're speaking Hebrew. These things start to add up. And so there's a growing number of Israeli civilians who might have been more supportive of this ongoing war before, but the numbers are starting to change. But Netanyahu understands that the second the war is over, it is likely that he'll be ousted from power. He'll face criminal charges. We've talked about the corruption allegations that he's dealing with. And remember, he failed to keep Israeli civilians safe. He failed to do exactly what he kept claiming that he was the best at doing. And so there's that. And then the final thing I'll say is, look, this war obviously has been incredibly costly for Palestinian civilians. But now you're hearing stories about the thousands of wounded IDF soldiers who aren't able to get the medical care that they need because their hospitals in Israel are overrun by wounded IDF soldiers. And we'll share some details about the deadliest day for IDF soldiers, which happened just yesterday. And so this is a cost for everyone involved. And I think even those who are initially supportive of this war are starting to think about whether or not the way this is being carried out is beneficial for anyone. And I mean, we've been saying it hasn't been, so.
So Netanyahu is now unpopular in Israel. More than 50% say that he's continuing the war to protect his own career. So that's a big number. Blaming Netanyahu for the ongoing war. Now this number is not large enough, but it's starting to get there. 35% of Israelis, and whenever you hear people saying Israel is this or Israel is that, remember there's a wide variety of people in Israel as there's a wide variety of people in Gaza, etc. And 35% now saying end the war and leave Gaza. Okay, so that's a good development. If that gets to over 50%, that would be a huge development. Look, what was Netanyahu and his war cabinet's massively, ridiculously right-wing government, zealous religious lunatics? What did they actually claim they want? What did they actually want? They claimed that they wanted to get the hostages back. They've made almost no effort to do that, and wipe out Hamas. And now they've admitted they basically totally failed in doing that, right? So if you're looking at it that way, you say, oh, that's just such a failure. But I don't think that's what they wanted at all. I think what they wanted was vengeance, retribution, blood. I'm sorry, but 25,000 dead. If it bothers you that I say that they wanted blood, it should bother you 2,000 times more that they actually did it. They actually murdered those civilians for vengeance and to punish the Palestinians, wholesale ethnic cleansing, drive them out of their homes, destroy the whole place. If you look, I keep saying we have eyes, we can see, the whole world can see that you leveled the place. The idea that they were not doing indiscriminate bombings, that they were targeting, is a joke. If you believe that, you bought into like the most over-the-top propaganda I have ever seen. Look at the place. 70% of the buildings are destroyed, 85% of the people are homeless, a quarter of them are starving, 25,000 are dead, over 10,000 children dead. And you're saying that was all an accident? Now you have to be completely detached from reality, so intensely biased that you can't see straight for you to say that. So their mission was to seek vengeance against the civilians of Gaza. That's just a fact. You see it, we all see it. So did they accomplish that mission? I think even some people in Israel that originally wanted that kind of vengeance, and look, you get attacked, your family members die, your people in your community die. A lot of people ask for vengeance. Totally. I get it, it's a human instinct.
It is a human instinct, right? So I totally understand that as well.
That's right. So, but now, I think even some of those folks in Israel are going, well, if we wanted vengeance, we got a lot of it. I mean, we killed 20, they've now killed 20 times the number of civilians that Hamas killed. If 20 times the terrorism of Hamas isn't enough for you, I'm not sure it's ever gonna be enough. So would 200 make a difference? And guys, the double standards are insane. So they say Yahya Sinwar, the IDF proudly claims, Netanyahu says, it doesn't matter where you go, it doesn't matter if you go to a different country, Qatar, Turkey, Egypt, it doesn't matter where you go, we're going to murder you, okay? And then they say, oh, by the way, if you want, you can leave. Wow, that seems so magnanimous. You're saying, I will probably kill you on the way, but if we don't, wherever you go, we're gonna murder you. Now, and everybody treats that as perfectly normal. Well, of course they're gonna want to kill all the leadership of Hamas and they'll bomb any country to do it. Imagine if the Palestinians were like, under every circumstance, we're gonna make sure we murder Netanyahu, and we're gonna murder Ben-Gvir, and we're gonna murder all this. And what would people say? They'd say, terrorist! Can you believe what they're doing to the poor leader of Israel? Okay, so look, let's stop the double standards. Both sides want to kill each other, I get it. I don't want either side to kill each other. We want to mainly protect the civilians. The way you do that is a peace deal. Look, last thing I'll say is from one of our viewers, Gabby Marita. She said, basically paraphrasing Netanyahu here, you give me everything I want and I'll stop murdering you until March, is not a serious offer, okay? It isn't. If you're realistic, you leave Gaza, you get your hostages back, and that's a real offer, and that's an offer the world can live with. And then for God's sake, do a two-state solution. Netanyahu has promised he is never, ever going to do it. The people of Israel, you must remove him. The #1 barrier to peace is Benjamin Netanyahu.
Thanks for watching. If you become a member, you get to watch all this ad-free, except for, of course, this ad. Still, hit the join button below.